All right. So I just finished reading slash watching, mostly reading the quotes from today's press conference. End of season press conference happens for every team every year. Most of the time, not terribly interesting because unless somebody, gets fired or some sort of sweeping regime change, that's part of firing, of course. You just don't have a lot of interesting stuff. You have a lot of pull quotes, is what you have. But I thought this one was interesting, and I thought it was interesting enough that I wanted to record a video. First, let's go over who attended it. Pobo, president of baseball operations. I don't know if Pobo is actually a thing, but I really like saying it. Jerry DePoto, Pobo DePoto. Pobo DePoto kind of sounds like a Italian place, doesn't it? So you had DePoto, you had general manager Justin Hollander, you had manager Scott Service. Who you did not have is I forget the exact title that they used for it, but John Stanton wasn't there. Effectively, the owner of the Seattle Mariners was not there. That is not uncommon, but he wasn't there. And we'll talk about that in just a second. Because, and I also want to issue some caveats slash prefaces or whatever. I was not there. I wasn't in that room. And I have low expectations for these things. I know what everyone wants to hear in these things. They especially want to hear like the owner of the team get up there and scream that he's mad as heck and that he's going to do everything in his power to make sure that this disappointing season isn't going to happen again. He's going to go out and give him every resource possible needed to make sure that we're bringing a championship home. That's what you want to hear. You're never going to hear that. You're not going to hear that from the big market teams. Every once in a while, there's a Steve Cohen, but that's mostly stuff you hear from SEC coaches. That's more of a amateur type of thing that you hear than something you hear from professional sports teams. So, wasn't there. A lot of stuff that could be taken out of context and very low expectations. All three of those things want to be abundantly clear that all three of these things apply. And yet, I still came away extremely disappointed with this press conference. If I was going to use two terms to describe this press conference, in my humble estimation, they came across as tone deaf and arrogant. And let's start with the fact that Stanton isn't there. I want to be careful with my words here. And it's not because I want to be careful because I don't want the Mariners to be mad at me. The Mariners are always going to like me a little bit because of grandma. And, they've reached out and a front office manager sent me a front office member, excuse me, not a manager, a front office member sent me a very, very nice email after my mom passed. And I appreciate it very much. I'll leave that private because I don't know if he or she wants that information out there. But I like personally a lot of these people. But I was still extremely disappointed with what I heard today. And I was extremely disappointed. I was starting to get there and then I rambled on. You guys should be used to it by now. I can't hold a thought for too long. I was extremely disappointed with no John Stanton. I'm not surprised. It was announced that Stanton wouldn't be there. But it doesn't dissuade the thought that John Stanton's ultimate goal for this team isn't winning. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not even sure if I need Stanton's ultimate goal to be winning. I need it to be higher up. I think you can run a very successful baseball team and still make a lot of money. I do believe those two things are not I just forgot the term. I do not believe that that they are mutually exclusive. I think you can do both, but you have to care about both. And those of you who believe that John Stanton doesn't give a you know what about winning, you have more evidence than other people do. I'm somewhere in between. I do know that it's 100%, in my humble estimation. It's weird to say 100% about something that's subjective, but I have very little doubt in my mind, if any, that winning is not the most important thing to John Stanton. Winning isn't the most important thing to a lot of owners. Heck, winning might not be the most important thing to any owners. But there are definitely teams that have ownership groups that care much more about the profit that is going into their bank account than they do about winning baseball games. I think the Seattle Mariners are one of them. And Stanton not being there to answer questions, maybe he'll have his own press conference. I hope he does, to answer some questions. But yeah, was disappointed. The next thing that disappointed me, the term step forward was used for this season. I just vehemently disagree. Now, here's what I'll say. Let me get comfortable. I don't disagree that it was a step forward for some players. I think it was a huge step forward for JP Crawford. I think it was a very large step forward for Jared Kelnick, even though the season ended disappointingly. And you've got the whole don't kick water, whatever things, folks. Don't do that. That's disappointing. But for a lot of the year, he was a much better baseball player. And you saw flashes that suggest that he can be, at the very least, a solid regular. Still work to be done, but I think you can call that a step forward for him. Step forward for Julio's defense. And it's not like it was bad last year. It's just he's become an elite defensive center fielder. That's awesome. Raleigh made a couple of strides. He was pretty similar to what he did last year, but did it for a full season. But this is where the tone deafness comes in. You have an organization that has made the playoffs once in this century. If you count 2000 as this century, fine, they've made it. Okay, they've made it twice or three times this century. They've made it once in the last 22 years. And that was last year when you won 90 games and you won a playoff series and advanced to the LDS and held your own against the Houston Astros. Didn't win any games, but held your own. All three of those games extremely close. Winning less games and seeing the regression that you had from some of those players, and seeing that the overwhelming majority of your offseason moves didn't work, calling this season a step forward? Really? Really? I wouldn't have had any issues saying that this team has a very bright future, because I do believe that. Absolutely, I believe that. They have a heck of a core. I really do believe that. And if you want to say specific players, specific key players took steps forward, that's fine too. But saying the team took a step forward, there is, and this is not just me, this is not just some Seattle Mariner fans, this is a industry-wide thing, that a lot of people think that, I'm going to be very careful phrasing this. The words insulting other people's intelligence have been used about the Seattle Mariner front office and ownership group. And I think calling it a step forward is doing that. The next thing that ticked me off, and it was basically a throwaway line. They were asked about Cal's comments. And, this was more tone deaf nonsense about, and hey, we all want to have great players. And it was so talking down about, we all just want to have great players, right? Like, sure, if in an ideal world, that type of stuff without actually saying it. But then Dipoto brought up that he signed 3 of the 40 largest contracts in baseball over, and I forget the timetable. Are you freaking kidding me, dude? Are you kidding me? There's a running joke on Twitter about hanging banners for the Seattle Mariners. And I hope my buddy Joe Vallero puts that one up. 3 of the 40 largest contracts in baseball signed. Whoop-de frickin' do. The fact you would even bring that up as, and I know what he was trying to say is that we'll spend money when it's necessary. We'll spend money when it's the right player, the right situation. But it just comes across as like we should throw you a gosh dang party because you were willing to sign 3 of the 40 largest contracts in baseball. I'm sorry for that last one for the kids who are watching. But that ticked me off. You did what you were supposed to do with a few players. Congratulations on signing Julio Rodriguez, maybe the most talented 21-year-old I've ever seen, to a long-term contract. Congrats on signing Luis Castillo to a long-term deal. And the Robbie Ray deal. Congratulations. Light the beacons, hang the banners. That's just the definition of talking down to a franchise, or talking down to a franchise's fans, I should say. I'm trying to think if anything else really made me mad. It was just the overall sense of arrogance. There was almost a feeling of, why are you even here asking us about this? We know so much more than you. We have such a great long term plan. How dare you question it? How dare we question the franchise that's made 1 postseason appearance in 22 years? How dare we question the franchise that didn't make moves at the deadline to get better and finishes 1 game out of a postseason appearance? How dare we question the team that has had so, so many mistakes made over the last few years? How dare we? And again, how dare we is my feeling of how that press conference went. So they didn't say it out loud. But feeling like this organization is talking down to us based on how last year went. Folks, 2022 is an abject failure. It's a failure. At the very best, 2022 can be called a bridge year. At the very best, it can be called a bridge year. You might be able to get away with saying, you know what? This was a year that it didn't go the way they hoped, but it set in motion some stuff for them to build a sustainable winning culture. Sustainable winning culture. That sounds like something they'd say, doesn't it? I'm sure they've said it at some point. The arrogance and tone deafness just really get to me. But that's the best thing you could say about 2023 is that it's at best a bridge year. And to have disdain or the arrogance to call this a step forward and to brag about signing 3 of the 40 largest contracts in baseball. Come on. I didn't like it. And the attitude about like spending on free agency and, just more platitudes, more non-answers. We're going to look to improve the team via this, this, and this. Until I am proven wrong, they're not going to spend a lot of money on a bat. I hope I'm wrong. I desperately want to be doing a video entitled Shohei Otani is a Seattle Mariner, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. Or something along those lines. But I'll believe it when I see it. Anyway, I didn't love that press conference. And I don't know if there's anything tangible to take out of this. Looks like about 17 minutes of talking here, but wanted to put my thoughts out there. And I'd like to know what you guys think. And I'd love it if you hit like and if you hit subscribe if you haven't. Talk to you guys soon.